Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Cabinet meeting. Move straight on with the agenda and move on to item 1, which is any declarations of interest. Do any members have anything to declare? No, thank you very much. Item 2 is urgent business. I have none. Move to item 3. Can we have apologies for absence, please, Vicky?
Yeah, I've got apologies from Councillor Donegate and Councillor McKeon's deputising, Councillor Wild, Councillor Walsh and Councillor Ishmael.
Thank you. The minutes, of the last meeting have been circulated. Do we have any matters arising from those minutes, please? No, we haven't. So can we have those taken as a true record, please? Thank you. And then we move to the main business of the meeting, which is item 5, Greater Manchester Clean Air Plan. And can I invite, please, Mr. Jerry Brough, the Director of Place, to present the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and good afternoon, Cabinet. This report is a report which is being presented by all local authorities in GM. It summarises the current position on the clean air proposals, asks Cabinet to support the proposals from GM or in tandem with GM. Basically, this is not binding the Council to anything other than to proceed with the initial installation of some equipment for the clean air zone and to commence the procurement process, the consultation process. The following consultation process, this will come back to Council. They'll have to make a decision, and the GM are expecting that during that consultation process they will be able to firm up on what the government's contribution will be to help implement the whole plan. As you can see from the report, an initial submission was made to government, and the government came back with a smaller amount of funds than had been asked. So there's still an element of negotiation going on between GM and the government to try and secure all of the funding that we require to implement the clean air proposals. I'm happy to leave it at that and take any questions if that's all right, Cabinet. I'm expecting that perhaps Carolyn Greenan, who was the main author of the initial report that went to GM, will be here if it gets into technical debate.
Thank you, Jerry. I've got some people indicating. Councillor Hornby. You're on mute, Councillor Hornby.
Sorry about that, Leader. Thank you. I'm just curious as to, will it go according to the time scale on this, or is it likely to be delayed due to the mayoral elections next year, Leader?
I can respond to that if John wants to. Thank you. I see where you're going with that question, Councillor Hornby, because I think there's a lot of work still to be done on this piece, and certainly around funding and for funding for sectors. So the answer is we don't know. Certainly the consultation is planned to take place. I have concerns myself about what will actually the public be asked to consult on, because there's still so many unanswered questions remaining. And clearly, we don't know what post-COVID is going to look like, what consultation is going to look post-COVID, and what that can be. And it's important that consultation has to be key, and it has to be, well, we want as much consultation as possible. We want the public to know exactly what the proposals are and want to hear from them. So there's a lot of work still to be done, particularly around funding sectors like, as we've talked about before, taxes, private hires, small businesses, the implications, and so there's a lot more detail yet. It's very important to recognise this report is just noting progress. This is not in any way a fait accompli. We still have to look at a lot more detail before we come to an actual final verdict on it. So we shall have to wait to see. Things have been deferred before, as you know, Councillor Hornby, because of mayoral elections, but we'll wait and see.
Can I just come back on that, Leader? As you know, we will be still proceeding with another consultation process with the boundary change, and there are those that would have suggested that be delayed, but they're insistent with that goes ahead. I just hope that the same kind of vigour then is put with this in order that there is no delay with it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Can I bring in Councillor Peel?
Thank you, Leader. I think delays to implementation of this or not are probably one of the biggest single factors that will be the current pandemic.
You've frozen, Councillor Peel, on my screen. Are you there?
Councillor Greenhouse, that looks like an internet freeze on Councillor Peel's screen.
Right, we'll hope to get Councillor Peel back soon. We'll bring him straight back to where he was. In the meantime, can I invite Councillor Allen, please, to speak?
Thank you, Leader. I hope Nick gets back, because I'm sure he has something positive to say. Members will know that I have grave reservations about this whole scheme, and indeed I've given the Leader a list of questions which I'm sure he'll respond to in due course. But I am concerned about it. I'm concerned about the quality of the data that it's based on and some of the assumptions. The effectiveness of it, you know, whether it'll work or not, the viability, the funding is a big issue, because I think the amount of money that we've asked for is nowhere near enough to do what Mr. Burnham thinks he wants to do, and the cost to local businesses of implementing the scheme. I still see this as congestion charging by the back door, and I'll continue to oppose it. So I won't go through the questions in detail, Leader. I'll wait for you to respond to those when you've got time. But I do want to register the fact that I'm really concerned about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. You'll appreciate, I know you sent me the questions at just after 1 o'clock, but I have been in meetings since then. I have responded to you, as you know. And I'm happy for you to ask any meetings to officers at this meeting. Obviously, that's your absolute prerogative. You're able to do that, as I said to you quickly when I emailed back. So I'm happy for you to do that if you want to ask any further questions. I'll certainly will try and answer the questions when I've got time, and I will do later on with pleasure. But certainly, if you want to come back with any individual questions, I'm happy for you to ask those questions in the public arena. But I don't know if, I mean, again, I think you raise concerns that I think we as a cabinet are raising continuously, and until we get to know what the actual consultation, what we're actually consulting on, we can't move this forward. And we look at the deal, and we need, I mean, I personally feel that government, I call out to the government to actually look at this again, look at their response to Client Earth in a post-COVID world, and look at it realistically about the level of funding that's going to be required to deliver this. And also look, and I know this is part of the scheme initially, the scheme is also still not taking out of the equation a solely Manchester city centre circle, which I think would be something that we could possibly look at in the future, similar to they have on the inner ring within London. And then we would obviously have to look at measures within our own areas where we have these hotspots. But I think there's lots of flaws with this, as we've seen going on, and something that really raises concerns. But I think we're in the same ballpark. Can I bring in Councillor Howarth, please? She's next indicated.
Can you let David know I'm here?
We have done. We've messaged him.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leader. I was obviously going to wait for the leader of our group, but I will say a few things. Just say a couple of things, but of course I usually bring questions, just a couple of questions to Cabinet rather than giving you statements. Just a couple of facts, of course, that we feel, and as others know, that this was within government departments, this issue of unclean air, problems with air quality around 2010. And whilst there is this phrase at the moment that never goes away, that the government want to get on with things in the shortest possible time, of course, looking at the recent history, we feel that things just started to come out of government around 2015. So there's that odd background, and now there is the sort of push to the city region, the push to Bolton to get on with it, and yet they didn't get on with it for 5 years. And just a little comment from me, again, that phrase, the shortest possible time, get on with this, you know, the pace issues. You'll understand from my point of view, I don't hear that on health inequalities. I don't hear that on BAME inequality issues. I don't hear that on financing in local government for early years. So I'm concerned about that. I just want to talk to the section around 6.1 in the report that mentions light good vehicles. That's up to 3.5 tonnes. And of course, we recognise immediately that that's a sizable economic matter for the borough. Small micro business, one man and a van type activities. It's not clear enough. I'd be grateful for some clarification on whether that's all category C are going to be currently exempted up to 2023, or whether there's mention in a sentence before that of just the older polluting vans. So what's the plan on that? Is it all vans, category C, or is it older polluting? Then I do want to know what assessments, if any, have been done for the Bolton Borough on the need for light good vehicles fleet support. Where are we with that? And then I hope you don't mind, I'm going to tie that in with the other statement in the document that the director did allude to the finance. It says HGVs and vans combined is part of the finance uplift GM is asking government for, the Clean Commercial Vehicle Fund. GM first thought we needed across the piece of this change 59 million, but then they did that assessment work that's in the document, and they've now they've billed that at 98 million, 8 million of which on that is for the HGVs. I want to understand better what reasons are given for such a lack of government finance if we're going to need to progress this in Bolton and Greater Manchester. Thank you.
I'll start with. Can I just ask everybody to mute when they're not speaking? Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So I'll make two general points and then I'll bring Mr. Brough in, Jerry, for the specifics. Completely share your concerns about the sector, the white van man, that's right, and completely share your concerns on that and the support that's needed for that sector. On the argument of funding, there is a discussion ongoing between GM and government. Government quite clearly want GM to come up with a fully costed proposals inclusive of all sectors on what is needed. GM want government to come up with how much government is prepared to give. It will then come up with the proposals to fit the costs that government, the funds that government will provide. And that is a significant difference. And one is saying, show me what you've got and we'll work with it. The other is saying, no, tell me what you want and we'll see if we can give you that. So it's two options. And at the moment, there appears to me, as I'm observing it, a standoff at the moment in terms of who is going to present on either side. So that is the position on funding. It's not that funding is not available. Rebecca Powell, who is the minister involved in this, has made it very clear. Let me know how much you need and we will see if we can accommodate. But GM have through Mayor Burnham, have taken a stance that they know they would prefer government to tell them what money they've got, and they will put the scheme around that. Regarding the specifics, I'm going to bring in Mr. Brough.
Thank you, Leader. As I understand it, all Category C vehicles will be exempt until the end of 2023. You have to remember, in terms of the pressure for this, you have to remember the genesis of this particular piece of work, and that is that there was a case taken against the UK government. Subsequently, there were legal rulings which complied local authorities to meet certain requirements in terms of clean air. And I think I saw a letter fairly recently, in fact, from Clean Earth, the group who took the legal action, reminding councillors, it was sent to all councils in England, reminding them of their obligations under legislation. So there is considerable legal pressure on councils to come up with a scheme, failing which then potentially there would be some sanctions applied to councils on an individual basis, as I understand it. So that maybe it doesn't excuse, but does explain why there's a considerable pressure for this particular issue to be dealt with, where there isn't the same pressure for maybe some other issues. Does that answer your question, Councillor? I think hopefully it does.
Yes, thank you very much. Certainly about it being all the Category C vehicles exempt until 2023, but I think all will note that it's not that far off, and there's a lot of work to do for that sector, for that economic sector in the borough, is there not? Thank you.
Glad to see that Councillor Peel has been able to rejoin us, so if I can bring in Councillor Peel, please.
Rejoined you because I'm on a speakerphone. My internet connection unfortunately collapsed when I started to speak. I indicated that I had a question first, please, and then a general comment. So my question to Jerry is, one of the issues that GM identified quite early, as did other councils, was the Highways England, which of course is responsible for the motorways, is exempt from having to introduce clean air measures, and we know that there's an extensive motorway network around Greater Manchester, and places such as the junction at Kersley and other major junctions around the M60 are some of the highest polluting spots. Now, I noticed on the follow-up letter that GM sent to government, they've again reminded the government about this question about Highways England. It doesn't appear that the government responded to this. Have I understand that situation correctly, and can anybody tell me why Highways England has been responsible for some of the worst pollution in Greater Manchester is still deemed exempt from the proposals?
Jerry?
Yes, Leader, thank you. I can't tell you why, Councillor Peel. As you quite rightly said, on a number of occasions GM have asked the question, but I don't think we've ever been given a satisfactory answer as to why they've not been included in the proposals. And to us it still remains a bit of a mystery why you wouldn't want to consider that. As you've said, some major junctions that they are responsible for are a prime source of NO2 emissions, and you would have thought that a comprehensive clean air strategy would take account of that.
You're absolutely right, Councillor Peel. It's completely flawed. It should be included in it. When you look at our, major arterial routes into the town, and it's into the from the GM, within the GM conurbation, for the Highways England roads not to be included is just one aspect of this, once again, which does raise some very serious questions for us. And I know there are proposals, I'm told, for Highways England to take independently some action in terms of screening and such like, but to have them not included in this, and together with the fact that it's measuring one level of pollution, it's not looking at other levels of pollution that could be serious, have serious implications to public health as well. it just seems that the whole premise, while being one of environment health issues, which we're all hugely attentive to within the current climate, but it doesn't seem to take in the whole picture. So you're right. Was there anything else, Councillor Peel, you wanted to ask, or?
Can I indulge you a moment? As I'm listening into the meeting, I think I may be about to restart my connection to join the meeting. So could I just indulge you and ask you to come back to me, please, David?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Will do. Councillor Allen.
Thanks, Leader. Couple of points, if I can. Jerry mentioned the legal aspect, which of course is Client Earth's challenge. Originally, I think that challenge was made under EU law. Has that now been transferred to UK law, or are we still being challenged under EU law? And if it's still under EU law, then of course, what happens when we leave? Whilst you're thinking of the answer to that, Jerry, just a comment on the Leader's comment about the funding. Let me just give you an example of how ludicrous these numbers are. £28 million for taxes, to bring taxes up to date, £28 million. If we take the cost of a Euro 6 compliant private hire vehicle at, let's say, 10 grand, that would buy 2,800 vehicles. We have 2,000 in Bolton. So the numbers, you know, and I might be out with the £10,000, perhaps it's 12, perhaps it's 15, but the numbers just do not stack up at all. So I really do think that Mayor Burnham should be putting these numbers to the government, and he should be putting realistic numbers. Otherwise, the offer that we get from government will be nowhere near enough. But perhaps that's what he wants. So EU law. Thanks, Leader.
Thanks, Bob. Jerry, to bring in Helen Gorman if the Borough Solicitor's on, but Jerry?
My understanding is that the UK adopted that law and brought it into UK law. So in fact, we're being compliant with UK legislation de facto. The other point you made about the lack of funding, again, we've raised this on a number of occasions, and we don't think we would we couldn't fault your arithmetic, put it that way. I think that there's some difficulties in putting this through.
Thank you. Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Jerry.
We've had confirmation there from the Borough Solicitor that Jerry is absolutely correct there as well in about it being become UK law. I'm pleased to say Councillor Peel is back on. Can I bring in Councillor Peel?
Thanks, Leader. The marvels of technology will continue to test us. Yes, the places like Greater Manchester, and it's not just Greater Manchester, let's remember this, there's quite a number of city regions across the country who are facing this same problem. But we're actually between a rock and a hard place, aren't we? Because as Mr. Brough said, the legal action is being directed against local authorities. And this is where I think the fundamental flaw has always lied with the clean air issue, and that is the initial legal action was targeted against the UK government, and UK government applied law and said, well, actually, the responsible authorities for implementing clean air are local authorities, and also other bodies like Highways England, as we've understood, have been exempt. Now, I think that from the very beginning was wrong. I don't think the government have really shown or taken the lead on a national strategy. What they seem to have done is have picked out various areas of the country with the worst pollution, and that is a moving feast. And those areas of the country that don't have, that aren't in the top polluters, they currently don't have to do anything. But as the trend continues in those other areas, they soon will have to do something. And so this is a moving feast, and government will be approaching other areas of the country and saying we want cleaner plans from you. And to me, this is not the way to go about it. They should have embarked upon a national strategy, and pinpointing the worst areas, albeit I accept that, but a national strategy of tackling clean air, because all we have instead of this is individual city regions across Britain engaging in separate and individual discussions with the government, all with their own all with their own package of measures that they feel that they need in order to either implement cleaner charging or do other mitigating things. And because of that, there is no national strategy, there is no national pot as to how much it would actually cost. Now, I've always taken the view, and quite consistent on this, and despite that some of my colleagues across GM may disagree, but I've always thought clean air charging is, quite frankly, a cack-handed way of tackling this. There should be a national infrastructure, properly funded national infrastructure scheme, in particular scrappage schemes, and in particular investment in green energy, especially electrical charging points. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to be left where we are, with individual regions having individual conversations with government, doing their best, looking over the shoulder at the fact that they could be getting legal action against us, and authorities like Bolton, well, what are we going to do if there can be no agreement, if there's no political will across GM to implement a clean air charging zone, and yet Jerry and the Borough Solicitor basically come back to you as leader and say, well, you're stuck now because we're going to be taken to court. Now, that is a major problem that we're going to be facing. The good thing is we're not going to face it alone, are we? We're going to face it with lots of other local authorities and city regions across the country. And I think we do need to all work together and strongly challenge the government to take a national approach to this. There's lots more to say, but I'll leave it for now. This report asks us to go to the next phase of consultation, and I accept that that's what's going to happen, and we'll get more information back from that consultation that'll help us take the next steps in ultimately how we respond to this big problem.
I think, Councillor Peel, that there is considerable common ground, actually, you'll find, between us in what the position is at the moment on this. This isn't the right, I think, as an administration, we feel currently, from what we've seen so far, this isn't the right fit for Bolton. And I accept what you're saying about this is the next steps. And this paper, if it wasn't said earlier, of course, is part of a schedule that is adhered to in a timetable under GM, which paper is going to all GM authorities, to their cabinets, to be noted, as it were, on progress. And that was part of the timetable, in that in terms of giving regular updates to the members within about what was happening regarding the plan. But I think we will inherit whatever circumstance we inherit. It will be a different world post-COVID, particularly around how people operate, and I think that all has to be factored in. We can't just carry on with this as if we were just carrying on as if normal, as if COVID had not happened. There are implications as a result of COVID, and people's practices are changing. The practices of how people and where people work will change. So habits will change. So I think post-COVID does give us an opportunity to revisit this and look at it. But I think we're very much, I would imagine, pretty much all of us on the same page of that. We feel currently this is flawed and it needs to be looked at in a lot more detail. I don't know. I've got Councillor Galloway and then Councillor Cox. Councillor Galloway.
I just remember, it's a question to Nick Peel, who's disappeared now. I remember in the autumn winter of 2018, when we were first told about the clean air legislation, the initial plan was that the roads that had CO2 emissions, I think there were about 3 or 4, they were going to have individual tolling markers, and we were discussing whether that was a good idea. At that point, it wasn't a GM-wide plan, and I just wondered, because you had the portfolio before I took it over in June last year, when did it become a GM plan? When did it need a GM response to the clean air legislation?
Councillor Peel, do you want to help Councillor Galloway out there?
It's quite an interesting situation where the leader of the opposition is
question. Yes, I know.
He's called upon to answer questions at the cabinet meeting. I mean, I would have to look up those details, Councillor Galloway, because as far as I'm concerned, it's always been, it's always been GM led. Now there might have been a period of time, but when Bolton was given the instruction to come up with a plan, so were a number of other authorities across GM at the same time. So we hadn't been doing any particular. There might have been work going on in the background, but we certainly weren't. There was no reports being written to come out with a Bolton plan on its own. So as soon as we got that instruction, so did the other GM authorities. I think bar one, it might have been Rochdale that didn't get it at the same time. So it was always GM led.
Councillor Galloway, did you want to come back on that, or are you okay?
But distinctly, a meeting in the town hall, in the council chamber. I think it was Simon Warburton, and he was telling us, he was showing us the roads in Bolton, and the discussion was about having tolls and cameras only on those specific roads.
Thank you for that, Councillor Galloway. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of points, really. I mean, this report, we should perhaps just point out again, is only for noting, but I would like to make just 2 brief points. The first one is I hope the consultation is a good faith consultation. I think a lot of people are slightly suspicious of public consultations, that a number of parts in this report, it's sort of saying, you know, what we're going to do once the consultation is over. Well, if the consultation comes back that the people of Greater Manchester really don't want this, then I'm not quite sure where it goes from there. So I do hope it's a good faith consultation. That's the first point. The second one is I also don't think you can just pretend COVID-19 has not happened and that the effects on the economy will not be profound going forward. If you look at the £100 charge that's being proposed going into for lorries going into Manchester, imagine if Leeds do something similar and a haulage company is got to go from Leeds to Manchester every day. It's going to cost them thousands and thousands of pounds unless they replace the vehicles. In fact, the whole message is that they replace the vehicles. Well, how many haulage companies are now going to have the capital to do that? It's going to place a huge strain on resources of haulage companies, and we just can't pretend that after COVID-19, you know, that's not going to be an enormous challenge for them. As I say, this is a note. This is to note that consultation will clearly go forward, but you know, I hope it's good faith, and I hope government recognise that you just cannot go on with these things as though nothing has happened. COVID-19 has happened, and it's going to have a profound effect on many people's companies, not least haulage companies. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I've not had any more indications to speak. Of course, following consultation, it will, of course, in the end come back to a vote at our full council. So we will ourselves determine So we then, if there's no more indications to speak, and I haven't, we'll move to the recommendations which are listed in the agenda. Again, as I pointed out, they're all for noting and to move to a consultation when that is seen a fit and proper time to take place when we have more detail. So I'll move to Cabinet, and I'm going to invite Mrs. Ridge, if I can, to go through Cabinet members who vote. And as I just reiterate again, this is not any formal decision in terms of the actual proposals and for the moving ahead with the proposals. This is just to note progress and to approve a consultation process. So over to you, Mrs. Ridge.
Thank you, Leader. So, Councillor Greenhalgh.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Haslam.
For.
Councillor Muslin.
For.
Councillor Warren.
For.
Councillor Hewitt.
For.
Councillor Galloway.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Baines.
For.
And Councillor Mrs. Fairclough.
For.
Thank you. So that is approved to go all the recommendations. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for those that watched. Apologies for the slight glitches in the IT. We'll blame it on the weather, and thank you for joining us today. That I declare the meeting closed.